It was just after 7 p.m. in Tempe, Arizona. The town hall auditorium buzzed with the low murmur of small talk. The lights above were harsh and sterile, casting long shadows behind the folding chairs. People fanned themselves with printed programs, most expecting the same political theater they'd seen a dozen times before. Speeches, applause, maybe a little tension, but no one expected that moment. Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett sat at the far left of the panel table, hands calmly folded in her lap. Her expression was unreadable, her posture still, but something in her eyes said she wasn't here to perform. The moderator adjusted the microphone and glanced at the next card. He cleared his throat. "Congresswoman Crockett," he said, pausing just a beat too long. "Do you believe there's a double standard in how America treats immigrants?" The room stilled. People leaned in. Jasmine didn't flinch. She didn't look at her notes. She leaned slightly toward the mic. And then, with a voice calm but piercing, she said, "If the First Lady and her son arrived in this country today, no name, no wealth, no privilege, they'd be treated like any other undocumented immigrant, locked up or deported." A single breath passed, and then a gasp from somewhere in the third row. A camera clicked. A senator shifted awkwardly in his chair. The temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. No one said a word, but everyone knew something just broke open. If Melania and her son arrived today without wealth or power, they'd be deported like everyone else. That was the sentence. 12 words, calmly delivered. No shouting, no insults, and yet it felt like a thunderclap. One of the cameras jolted sideways as the operator audibly gasped. A senator to Jasmine's right dropped his pen. Another panelist whispered something under her breath and crossed her arms. The moderator blinked, speechless, as if he hadn't really expected her to answer, at least not like that. In the third row, an older woman clutched her chest and whispered, "She said it." Because what Jasmine had done wasn't just bold, it was taboo. She didn't attack Melania. She didn't insult Barron. What she did was say out loud what thousands had only dared to think in private. And she said it on camera. On record. In front of reporters, lawmakers, and a room full of witnesses. It was the kind of sentence that silences a crowd not because it's wrong, but because it's true. In the private dining room just off the Oval Office, the clink of silverware echoed softly against polished china. Donald Trump sat alone at the table, a plate of meatloaf and mashed potatoes half finished in front of him. The TV on the wall played the town hall feed from Arizona, not that he was paying much attention. He was bored, slouched, picking at the peas. Then he heard it. Jasmine Crockett's voice, clear, direct, unflinching. If Melania and her son arrived today without wealth or power, they'd be deported like everyone else. His fork froze mid-air. Then, like a thunderclap, it clattered to the plate. He shot up in his seat, eyes wide, face flushing crimson. She said, "What?" The Secret Service agent posted outside the door flinched. Inside the room buzzed with panic as aides rushed in. Trump pointed a trembling finger at the screen. "Rewind it. Play that again. Right now." An aide scrambled for the remote, fumbling to backtrack the live stream. Trump's jaw tightened as he listened again. "That's my wife. That's my son. On live TV? This is disgusting. Disgraceful." The rage in his voice wasn't just political, it was personal, and that made it dangerous. Trump was pacing now. The room, once quiet, had become a war room. Half a dozen aides stood by the walls, phones in hand, not daring to speak until he did. He stopped suddenly and slammed his palm on the table. "We're not letting this slide. I want her buried by morning." A few aides exchanged nervous glances. "We spin it," he growled. "We make it look like she attacked a child. A child, for God's sake. Make her the villain." He pointed to his press secretary, Colby Dent. "You go to every network, every paper. You say, "This is an assault on the first family." Make it, "She crossed the line." Dent hesitated. "Sir, the footage? I don't care what the footage shows," Trump snapped. "We shape the narrative. If you let the facts speak, you've already lost." By 10:40 p.m., the call went out. Emails, text chains, group chats filled with right-wing media operators. By midnight, a talking points memo was circulating. Crockett targets child on live TV. Radical Congresswoman slanders innocent family. Shameful attack on motherhood. Fox News hosts were briefed. Opinion writers received anonymous tips. And MAGA influencers had their captions ready before sunrise. The machine was moving, and Jasmine Crockett had just become its next target. By midnight, Twitter was on fire. It started with a clip just 17 seconds of Jasmine Crockett's now infamous sentence. But it didn't stop there, because her words had unlocked something. A dam of silence broke wide open. Hashtags began flooding timelines. Same rules for all. She said the truth, if they were brown. And then came the stories. Raw, unfiltered, painfully real. A woman in El Paso posted a photo of her mother in handcuffs at the border with the caption, "She didn't have heels or a stylist, just hope, and they took that too." A young man in Chicago shared a video of his little brother crying behind a chain-link fence. He was 6. They called him a threat. Another post showed a folded deportation order with trembling fingers holding it. "My dad was gone in 3 days. No trial, no goodbye. But sure, let's talk about who's attacking who." By 1:30 a.m., hashtag Same Rules for All had over 2.3 million uses. TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, every platform was echoing with the same message. We see the double standard, and we're done pretending it doesn't exist. Jasmine hadn't called for this wave. She hadn't asked for it. But truth, real aching truth, has a way of speaking for itself. And now it was shouting. It wasn't just politicians who noticed. By Friday morning, the clip had made its way into places no press release ever could. In a small ESL classroom in San Bernardino, California, Mrs. Reyes, an immigrant herself, stood in front of a dusty projector screen. She played the now viral clip of Jasmine Crockett's town hall moment for her students, all children of immigrants. Some had never spoken in class before. Others avoided eye contact entirely. The room was quiet. Jasmine's words played once again. If Melania and her son arrived today without wealth or power, they'd be deported like everyone else. Silence. And then a voice. Soft, almost afraid to speak. From the third row, a girl named Alma, barely 13, lifted her head and whispered, "She's not scared." Miss Reyes paused the video. She didn't need to say anything. The look on the students' faces said enough, because something had shifted. It wasn't just about politics anymore. It was about being seen, heard, defended. In cities across the country, the same thing was happening. Clips shared in WhatsApp groups, screenshots passed between relatives, cafes in Queens, beauty salons in El Paso, a laundromat in Kansas City, all replaying one voice that sounded, finally, like it understood. And just like that, Jasmine Crockett stopped being a headline. She became a symbol. By Monday morning, Washington was a pressure cooker. The Capitol halls echoed with fast footsteps and hushed conversations. Cable news anchors tossed around terms like unprecedented, radical, and divisive. But behind the headlines, something far more calculated was unfolding. Representative Earl Maddox of Nebraska, a hardline conservative with a talent for outrage, stormed into the House chamber waving a manila envelope like a torch. "I'm filing a motion to censure Congresswoman Crockett," he declared to a circle of eager cameras. "We cannot allow members of this body to attack the first family. She crossed a sacred line." Reporters swarmed, pundits cheered, social media exploded. But behind the noise, something unexpected was happening. On the other side of the aisle, Democratic members closed ranks, not just out of party loyalty, but out of instinct. Because they could feel it too. This wasn't just another partisan jab. This was a moment that meant something. Meanwhile, outside the Capitol, hundreds of people had already gathered. Mothers with strollers, college students, Vietnam veterans. Many held signs that read, "She spoke for us. Truth shouldn't be punished." Crockett didn't make a statement. She didn't need to. Her silence was louder than the speeches. Because while Congress prepared to punish her, the people were rallying to protect her. The chamber was packed, every seat filled, every camera pointed, every breath held. Jasmine Crockett stood slowly, her navy blazer sharp against the warm wood of the room. She didn't bring notes, she didn't need them. Her heels clicked with calm purpose as she stepped toward the podium. She didn't look afraid, she looked ready. As murmurs quieted, she adjusted the microphone. Then, silence. She scanned the room, pausing on faces that had already made up their minds. And then she began. "You all know what I said. You've watched the clip, you've read the headlines. So let me say it again slowly for the people who keep pretending I said something I didn't." She held the pause. "I did not insult Melania Trump. I did not threaten Barron Trump. What I did was state a fact that if they arrived in this country today without wealth, without connections, without protection, they'd be treated like every other undocumented family in America." She stepped back slightly. "That's not cruelty, that's clarity." A murmur swept through the chamber, but Jasmine didn't flinch. "Don't punish me for saying what half this country already knows. Punish the system that makes it true." For a moment, no one moved. Even the ones who hated her couldn't deny the stillness. The weight of her words had landed. No shouting, no theatrics, just truth and a woman strong enough to speak it. It aired quietly. No primetime fanfare, no dramatic music. Just a camera, a chair, and Melania Trump. She had declined all major networks, CNN, NBC, even Fox. Instead, she chose a smaller outlet, the Scottsdale Review, and a former fashion journalist turned political interviewer named Daphne Quayle. The setting was serene, muted beige curtains, soft lighting. Melania wore a cream blouse, her hair pinned back, her expression unreadable. Daphne leaned forward gently. "You've stayed silent for over a week. Why speak now?" Melania folded her hands in her lap. "I never wanted to be part of this debate," she said slowly. "I am not a politician. I do not want to be compared to people who do not follow the law." The sentence hung there, calculated, cold. Daphne blinked. "You mean undocumented immigrants?" Melania didn't flinch. "Yes, I came here legally. I worked. I waited. It was not easy, but it was legal." That was it. No empathy, no acknowledgement of the families Jasmine Crockett had visited. No mention of pain, struggle, or complexity. Just distance. And America felt it. Within hours, the backlash came in waves. A DACA recipient posted, "Melania came with a portfolio. My mom came with a baby. Guess who's still waiting for papers?" An immigrant nurse tweeted, "I cleaned rooms for 14 years. Does that make me illegal in her eyes? Am I less human?" The silence in Melania's tone had spoken volumes. And what it said to millions was, "You don't belong." While Melania Trump sat beneath soft studio lights rehearsing lines for damage control, Jasmine Crockett was hundreds of miles away in a crowded community center in Las Cruces, New Mexico. No cameras, no stylists, no PR managers whispering in her ear, just her and the families. A Guatemalan mother who had lost her husband during an ICE raid. A teenage boy who hadn't seen his father in 3 years. A 5-year-old girl clutching a sketch pad, drawing a house with no door. Jasmine didn't speak much. She didn't need to. She listened. She hugged. She held hands with strangers like they were her own people, because they were. In that moment, she wasn't a congresswoman. She was a witness. Across the country, the contrast was undeniable. One woman guarded her image. The other embraced humanity. Melania's perfectly pressed ivory blouse might have looked flawless on screen, but Jasmine's stained sleeve from where a crying child had wiped her tears meant more. Because image doesn't change policy, but connection, real human connection, just might. Jasmine didn't hold a press conference. She didn't give a fiery speech. Instead, she picked up her phone, opened Twitter, and started posting. No hashtags, no filters, no slogans. Just truth, one image at a time. A worn photo of Isela, eyes red, holding her 2 young sons. The caption read, "Isela's husband was deported last year. No criminal record, just expired papers and a bad zip code. She hasn't told the kids yet. They still think he's away on a work trip." A modeling headshot of Marta, blonde, poised, perfect. The caption, "Marta overstayed her visa. She got a green card in 18 months. Her portfolio helped. So did her accent." A child's crayon drawing stick figures behind a wire fence. The caption, "This is Amma. She's 5. Her mom applied for asylum 6 months ago. They haven't heard a thing." The girl draws people waiting. She posted the thread in silence, but the world didn't stay silent. The tweets spread like wildfire, retweeted, shared, translated into Spanish, Farsi, Korean, Tagalog, Haitian Creole. By noon, the thread had been viewed over 11 million times. People didn't just read it, they responded. They replied with stories of their own. My mother was deported over a parking ticket. They lost my cousin's asylum paperwork 3 times. My grandmother died waiting for her green card interview. It wasn't a political statement anymore. It was a digital monument to lives ignored. Jasmine hadn't posted to go viral. She had posted to say, "Look, this is what I meant." And the internet looked back. It started in a high school classroom. A 17-year-old named Elias Sandoval stood at the front of the room, shaking slightly as he clutched a crumpled piece of paper. His civics teacher had asked students to present on someone they believed had impacted the national conversation. Most chose presidents. A few picked activists from textbooks. Elias chose Jasmine Crockett. His voice cracked on the 3rd line. "She said what we whisper at dinner when we think no one's listening." Then he paused. "My mom was deported when I was 9. They told me not to talk about it at school. I didn't until now." The class was silent. One student sniffled. Another wiped his eyes. Elsewhere, a video surfaced online. A young man, maybe 21, maybe younger, sat in front of his cracked laptop camera. Behind him was a faded family photo. In his hands, a letter from ICE. His words were raw, unedited, heartbreaking. "They took my mom. I was 14. She worked nights cleaning offices so I could study. They said she didn't belong. Jasmine Crockett didn't know my name, but when she spoke, she reminded me to speak." He broke down crying before he could finish. The video went viral overnight. It wasn't just politicians who were speaking now. It was students, sons, daughters, neighbors, people who had spent years in silence. Now they were speaking because one woman had the courage to speak first. The porch was small, peeling paint on the railings, a creaky screen door behind her. It wasn't staged. It wasn't polished. Jasmine Crockett sat on a worn folding chair on the front porch of the house she grew up in. No makeup, no team, no teleprompter. Just a phone propped up on a flower pot and her voice. She hit go live. Within minutes, over 30,000 people were watching. Her tone was calm, her hair was pulled back, her eyes tired but focused. "This is the house where I learned to keep quiet," she said, "where I learned to behave, to not cause trouble, to stay small." She glanced over her shoulder at the chipped paint on the front door. "But every time I stayed silent, someone else paid the price. So I'm done staying quiet." The camera didn't cut away. No graphics, no edits, just a woman on her childhood porch choosing truth over comfort. "If they come for me again, they'll find me standing right here, with no script, no shield, just truth." The live stream was only 6 minutes long, but the last line would echo far beyond those 360 seconds. Jasmine looked directly into the camera, her voice unwavering. "Truth doesn't need approval, it just needs a spine." Then she stood, walked to the phone, and ended the stream. What happened next was no longer in her hands. The internet caught fire again. Clips of her video were reposted with captions like, "This is what leadership looks like." She didn't ask for permission, she just told the truth. "For every voiceless mother, we see you now." And then something unusual happened. The video began showing up in places politicians rarely reach. In a church basement in Detroit, a pastor replayed her words during a Sunday sermon. "You don't need approval, you need courage." In a high school in Phoenix, a civics teacher paused his lecture and played the clip. Students sat still, listening. In a courthouse lobby in Boston, a public defender played it for a tearful mother waiting on her son's immigration hearing. It spread like wildfire, because when someone stands on truth, really stands, others rise too. And in that moment, Jasmine Crockett wasn't just a congresswoman. She was a signal flare in the dark. Life lesson. Sometimes truth doesn't need to be loud, it just needs to be said. Jasmine Crockett reminded us that silence, even when polite, can be dangerous. That defending what's right may come with consequences, but those consequences pale in comparison to what happens when we choose comfort over courage. In your own life, whether it's speaking up for a coworker, standing beside a neighbor, or simply refusing to look away from injustice, your voice matters. It may tremble, it may be small, but if it's rooted in truth, it will echo further than you know. If this story moved you, don't just scroll. Hit that subscribe button and join a community that refuses to stay silent. We bring you stories that the headlines miss and truths that deserve a voice. Click the bell so you never miss a moment of justice, courage, and real change. Your voice matters. Start here, start now.